Miranda Thornhill woke up as the morning sun peeked through her silk curtains. She stretched lazily in her king-sized bed, the Egyptian cotton sheets smooth against her skin. Another day of luxury awaited her. The massive bedroom of her mansion felt peaceful, with its crystal chandelier catching the light and throwing tiny rainbows across the walls. Her morning routine was nothing short of royal. Her personal maid brought her breakfast in bed: fresh fruit, avocado toast, and a specially brewed coffee from beans that cost more than what most people spent on groceries in a week. As she ate, Miranda scrolled through her phone, mainly checking her social media accounts where she loved to show off her perfect life. "Ma'am, your outfit for the charity lunch is ready," the maid said quietly, hanging up a designer dress that cost as much as a used car. Miranda barely looked up as she nodded. Miranda's husband, Thomas, had already left for work. As the heir to a banking fortune, he didn't need to work, but he enjoyed the power that came with his position. They rarely saw each other these days, but that was normal in their social circle. Their marriage was more of a business arrangement. She got his money and status, he got her beauty and social connections. After her massage and facial, Miranda's driver brought the car around. A sleek black luxury vehicle that hummed softly as it moved through the city. From behind her sunglasses, Miranda watched the ordinary people walking on the streets with a mixture of pity and disgust. How exhausting it must be to worry about bills and budgets, she thought. "We'll be stopping at Bennett's Jewelry before the lunch," she told her driver. "I need something new to wear to the Wilsons' gala." Across town, in a small apartment above a flower shop, Elena Mendez was already 4 hours into her workday. She had been up since 5 a.m., preparing flower arrangements for a wedding. Her hands were slightly rough from years of working with flowers, water, and gardening tools, but they created magic with every stem they touched. "Mom, I made you some tea," her 16-year-old daughter Sophia said, placing a mug next to her mother's workspace. Elena looked up with a warm smile. "Thank you, sweetheart. Did you finish your homework for tomorrow?" Sophia nodded. "I'm heading to Mrs. Lee's now to help her with her English practice." Elena felt a burst of pride. Despite their financial struggles, Sophia had grown into a kind-hearted young woman who volunteered to help their elderly neighbor improve her English skills. "Be back for dinner, okay? I'm making your favorite enchiladas." After Sophia left, Elena finished the wedding arrangements: beautiful bouquets of white roses, baby's breath, and greenery. The bride had a limited budget, but Elena had worked wonders with it, adding special touches that wouldn't cost extra but would make the flowers look more expensive than they were. At midday, Elena carried the open sign to the front of her shop, Bloom and Grow. The little bell above the door jingled as her first customer of the day walked in. "Elena, the arrangements for my mother's birthday were perfect," Mrs. Garcia said, giving Elena a warm hug. She couldn't stop talking about them. "I'm so glad she liked them," Elena replied, genuinely happy to hear the feedback. As the afternoon wore on, Elena helped customers pick out flowers for anniversaries, get well wishes, and just because bouquets. Between customers, she worked on her books, frowning at the numbers. The rent had gone up again, and the big flower delivery service that had opened nearby was taking some of her business. "We'll make it work," she whispered to herself, as she always did when things got tough. She had built this business from nothing after her husband left when Sophia was just a baby. She hadn't had much education or money, but she had determination and a natural talent with flowers. At the community center where she volunteered on weekends, Elena was teaching a free class on flower arranging. Many of her students were older people living alone or young mothers looking for a creative outlet. The joy on their faces when they created something beautiful made all her hard work worthwhile. That evening, as Elena closed up shop, she heard about the Spring Festival happening downtown that weekend. The organizer had stopped by to ask if she would donate some flower arrangements for the fundraiser. Of course, Elena had said without hesitation, even though she could barely afford it. That was just who she was, always giving, even when her own cup was nearly empty. Little did she know that this simple act of kindness would soon bring her face to face with Miranda Thornhill and change both their lives forever. The day of the Spring Festival arrived with perfect blue skies and a gentle breeze. The downtown area was transformed, with colorful banners hanging between streetlights and white tents set up in neat rows along Main Street. Children ran around with painted faces while local musicians played upbeat tunes on a small stage. Elena woke up earlier than usual that Saturday, excitement bubbling in her chest. The festival was one of her favorite community events, and she had spent all week preparing special flower arrangements to donate to the fundraiser. This year, the money raised would help renovate the community center where she taught her flower arranging classes. "Sophia, can you help me load these into the van?" Elena called to her daughter, gesturing at the boxes of flower arrangements. Sophia appeared in the doorway of their apartment, still in her pajamas, her dark hair tied in a messy bun. "They look amazing, Mom," she said, admiring the vibrant displays of spring flowers, tulips, daffodils, and cherry blossoms arranged in recycled glass jars that Elena had collected and painted herself. "I tried to make them special without spending too much," Elena explained as they carefully carried the arrangements down to her old delivery van. Mrs. Thompson from the bakery donated the ribbons. On the other side of town, Miranda Thornhill was not planning to attend something as common as a street festival. But her friend Veronica had called that morning, insisting she come. "The mayor will be there," Veronica had said. "And you know Thomas wants to get the mayor's support for that new development project." Miranda sighed dramatically as she looked through her closet. "Fine, but I'm not staying long. What does one even wear to these things?" She eventually settled on what she considered casual, a designer sundress that cost more than Elena's monthly rent, paired with expensive sandals and sunglasses. Her driver dropped her off a block away from the festival entrance because she couldn't bear the thought of having her luxury car stuck in festival traffic. "I'll text you when I'm ready to leave," she told him coldly. "Shouldn't be more than an hour." The festival was in full swing when Miranda arrived. She immediately spotted Veronica and a few other women from their social circle, all looking equally out of place among the regular townspeople. Miranda accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and pretended to be interested as the mayor discussed community initiatives. Meanwhile, Elena and Sophia had arrived with their cart of flower arrangements. They carefully navigated through the crowd, heading toward the community fundraiser booth where Elena's flowers would be sold. "Careful, Mom," Sophia warned as they squeezed past a particularly dense crowd gathered around a food stand selling homemade pies. Elena was so focused on not tipping over the cart that she didn't notice when the crowd shifted, pushing her slightly off balance. As she turned the corner, her cart bumped into someone, causing a small splash of liquid to fly through the air. That someone was Miranda Thornhill. Time seemed to slow down as champagne splattered across Miranda's expensive dress. A small gasp went up from the people standing nearby. "I'm so sorry," Elena said immediately, her face flushing with embarrassment. She put down the cart and reached for a napkin from her pocket. "Please, let me help clean that up." Miranda looked down at her dress in disbelief, then up at Elena. The look in her eyes changed from surprise to disgust as she took in Elena's simple clothes and work-worn hands. "Do you have any idea how much this costs?" Miranda hissed, her voice cutting through the festival noise. Several people stopped to watch the confrontation. "Of course you don't. People like you never do." Elena's hand froze midair, still holding the napkin. "It was an accident," she said quietly. "I really am sorry." Sophia stepped forward, sensing trouble. "Mom, let's just go to the booth." But before she could finish her sentence, Miranda did something that shocked everyone watching. With deliberate slowness, she leaned forward and spat directly into Elena's face. Several people gasped. A woman covered her young son's eyes. "Now you know your place," Miranda sneered, looking pleased with herself. Elena stood frozen, feeling the warm spit slide down her cheek. Her ears rang with humiliation as festival-goers stared in shocked silence. Some had pulled out phones to record the incident. Sophia rushed to her mother's side with a tissue. "Mom, are you okay?" she whispered, her young face twisted with a mixture of concern and anger. Elena couldn't speak. In all her years of hard work and struggle, no one had ever treated her with such blatant disrespect. Tears welled in her eyes as she wiped her face, but she held her head high, refusing to break down in public. What neither woman knew was that someone very important had witnessed the entire ugly scene, someone who was about to change both their lives forever. Alexander Wells had never intended to draw attention to himself that day. dressed in plain jeans, a simple button-up shirt, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He blended perfectly with the festival crowd. No one would guess that the unassuming man buying cotton candy from a local vendor was actually worth billions. He had moved to town just 3 weeks ago after buying a struggling tech company on the outskirts of the city. The company had brilliant engineers but poor management, exactly the kind of diamond in the rough that Alexander specialized in finding and polishing. He'd made his fortune that way, seeing value where others didn't. Alexander took a bite of his cotton candy and smiled as he watched a group of children dance into the band's music. This was why he came to the festival, to feel normal, to experience the community he was joining without the barrier his wealth usually created. That's when he saw it happen. The splash of champagne, the look of genuine apology on the flower seller's face, and then the shocking moment when the well-dressed woman deliberately spat at her. Alexander froze, cotton candy halfway to his mouth, stunned by the casual cruelty he had just witnessed. He recognized the aggressor immediately. Miranda Thornhill, wife of Charles Thornhill. Alexander had seen her photo in the research materials his assistant had prepared about local business leaders. Charles was a key figure Alexander was scheduled to meet next week to discuss a potential tech park development, a partnership worth millions to both parties. Without thinking, Alexander moved toward the humiliated woman, pulling a clean handkerchief from his pocket as he approached. The crowd parted slightly, still watching the aftermath of the shocking scene. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly, offering the handkerchief to the woman whose face was still wet with spit. Elena looked up, surprised by the kindness from a stranger. Her cheeks burned with shame as she accepted the handkerchief. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's nothing. Please forget it happened." Sophia stood protectively beside her mother, glaring in the direction Miranda had gone. "That was so mean," she said, her young voice shaking with indignation. "We should report her or something." Elena shook her head. "No, honey. Some people just, we need to be bigger than that." She dabbed at her face and tried to smile at Alexander. "Thank you for your kindness. I'm Elena, by the way." "I'm Alex," he replied, deliberately using the shortened version of his name that wouldn't be recognized. And that was not nothing. What that woman did was inexcusable. Elena sighed. "People like her, they live in a different world. They don't see people like us as real." Alexander felt something shift inside him at her words. He'd grown up poor, had known what it was like to be invisible to the wealthy. His success had changed how people treated him, but he had never forgotten. "Let me help you with these," he said, gesturing to the flower arrangements that had thankfully remained intact on the cart. "Where were you taking them?" "To the fundraiser booth," Elena explained. "I donate these every year." As they walked together, Alexander asked questions that seemed casual but were carefully chosen. He learned that Elena owned a small flower shop downtown, that she was a single mother raising a teenage daughter, that she volunteered teaching flower arranging at the community center. "These arrangements are beautiful," he observed truthfully. "You have real talent." Elena smiled for the first time since the incident. "Thank you. Flowers have always spoken to me somehow. No matter how bad things get, creating something beautiful helps." They reached the fundraiser booth, where Elena carefully arranged her donations. The volunteers thanked her profusely. "They always sell out first," one of the volunteers told Alexander. "Elena's arrangements are the best in town." Alexander noticed that despite her obvious talent, Elena's clothes were worn, and Sophia's sneakers had seen better days. He thought about the contrast between this hard-working woman and Miranda Thornhill, with her designer outfit and entitled attitude. As they said goodbye, Alexander made a decision. He wouldn't just forget what he'd witnessed. The meeting with Charles Thornhill next week had suddenly taken on a new dimension. "It was very nice to meet you, Elena," he said sincerely. "You and your daughter." "You too, Alex," Elena replied. "And thanks again for being kind when I needed it." Neither of them could have guessed that this brief encounter would soon change both their lives completely. The morning after the festival, Alexander sat in his spacious home office, a cup of coffee cooling beside his laptop. He couldn't shake the image of Elena's face after Miranda had spat on her, the mixture of shock, humiliation, and quiet dignity. He had seen that look before, long ago, on his mother's face when a wealthy customer had berated her at the diner where she worked double shifts. Lisa, he called to his assistant who was organizing papers in the corner of the office. I need you to find out everything you can about two people. Lisa looked up from her work. Of course. Who are we researching? First, Elena Mendez. She owns a flower shop downtown called Bloom and Grow. And second, more information on the Thornhills, particularly any businesses they own in the downtown area. Lisa nodded, making notes. Anything specific you're looking for? Alexander thought for a moment. For Ms. Mendez, I want to know about her business, how it's doing, any challenges she's facing. For the Thornhills, I want to know about their business practices, especially regarding small businesses downtown. With his resources and connections, information gathered quickly. By Wednesday, Alexander had a comprehensive picture of both situations, and what he discovered made his jaw clench with anger. Miranda Thornhill had a history that wouldn't surprise anyone who had witnessed her behavior at the festival. There were 3 separate incidents reported at high-end restaurants where she had reduced service to tears. At a charity gala the previous year, she had loudly insulted a waitress for spilling water near her shoes. The waitress had been fired on the spot after Miranda demanded it. Interesting pattern, Alexander murmured as he reviewed the reports. But what truly angered him was what he discovered about Elena's situation. Her flower shop was indeed struggling, but not due to lack of business or poor management. The building where she rented space had been purchased 6 months ago by a company called Urban Renaissance LLC. And who owns Urban Renaissance? Alexander asked Lisa during their afternoon briefing. It's a subsidiary of Thornhill Enterprises, Lisa replied. They've purchased 14 properties in the downtown area in the last year. Alexander nodded slowly as the picture became clear. And they've raised the rent. Almost tripled it in most cases, Lisa confirmed. 6 small businesses have already closed. According to these plans I found filed with the city, they're planning to demolish the entire block and build a luxury shopping complex. Alexander pulled up the city planning documents on his computer. There it was, Thornhill's vision for revitalizing downtown. The colorful renderings showed glass storefronts with expensive brands, valet parking, and not a single local business in sight. Has Elena been notified about these plans? He asked. Not officially, Lisa said. According to her lease, she has to vacate in 3 months when it expires. No option to renew. Alexander stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the town below. Elena's flower shop would be gone. The small cafe next door, the bookstore across the street, all would disappear, replaced by chain stores and luxury boutiques that the current residents could never afford to shop at. What about the community center where she volunteers? He asked. Lisa checked her notes. That property hasn't been purchased yet, but it's on their target list for Phase 2 of development. Alexander turned back to his desk and pulled out a business card. Charles Thornhill had sent it over earlier that week, confirming their meeting on Friday to discuss the tech park partnership. Lisa, I need you to make some calls, he said, a plan forming in his mind. Find out who currently owns the property where Elena's shop is located. Thornhill Enterprises owns it, Lisa reminded him. Alexander smiled slightly. Yes, but how much would it cost to buy it from them? In fact, I want figures on buying the entire block. Lisa's eyes widened. The entire block? That would be millions. I know, Alexander said calmly. Also, contact my attorney. I want to set up a new corporation, something that can't be traced back to me easily. And find out if the building next to Elena's shop is leased. I might need office space downtown. As Lisa hurried off to make the calls, Alexander reviewed the plans for his upcoming meeting with Charles Thornhill. The partnership they were set to discuss would have been lucrative for both parties. But now Alexander had a different kind of investment in mind, one that wouldn't show up on any balance sheet but would yield returns he valued far more. He picked up a pen and began making notes, preparing for a meeting that would now have a very different outcome than Charles Thornhill was expecting. Friday morning arrived with a light rain tapping against the windows of the Thornhill Enterprises headquarters. The sleek, glass-fronted building towered over the other structures downtown, its height a physical manifestation of the power Charles Thornhill held in the community. Alexander adjusted his tie as he rode the elevator to the top floor. He had deliberately dressed in his most expensive suit today, a stark contrast to his casual appearance at the festival. The leather briefcase he carried contained documents that had been prepared over the past 2 days, the result of his team working around the clock. "Mr. Wells, welcome." Charles Thornhill's secretary greeted him with practiced politeness. "Mr. Thornhill is expecting you. Please follow me." Charles Thornhill rose from behind his massive desk as Alexander entered the office. He was a tall man with silver hair and the confident smile of someone used to getting his way. "Alexander Wells, it's an honor to finally meet you in person," Charles said, extending his hand. "Your reputation precedes you." Alexander shook his hand firmly. "Likewise, Mr. Thornhill. Please call me Charles." He gestured to a seating area with plush leather chairs surrounding a glass coffee table. "Would you like some coffee, or perhaps something stronger?" "Coffee would be fine," Alexander replied, taking a seat and placing his briefcase beside him. As they waited for the secretary to bring their drinks, Charles launched into an enthusiastic description of the tech park they were planning to build. "The location is perfect, right at the edge of town with easy highway access. Once your company anchors the development, we'll attract tech firms from all over the country." Alexander nodded politely, letting Charles continue his pitch. The tech park itself was a solid business proposal. It would bring jobs to the area and utilize land that was currently vacant. "And of course," Charles added as the coffee arrived, "this is just one phase of our vision for revitalizing this town. My wife is particularly excited about our downtown project." "Oh," Alexander said, feigning ignorance. "You have plans for downtown as well?" Charles' eyes lit up. "Absolutely. Let me show you." He pressed a button on a remote, and a large screen descended from the ceiling. With another click, colorful renderings appeared. The same ones Alexander had already seen in the city planning documents. "We're transforming that rundown area into a premium shopping and dining destination," Charles explained, pointing to various features of the design. "The current buildings are eyesores, occupied by businesses that barely break even. Our development will increase property values throughout the area and bring in the kind of clientele this town needs to thrive." Alexander sipped his coffee slowly. "And what happens to the current businesses?" Charles waved his hand dismissively. "Progress requires change. Most of those shops are outdated anyway. A flower shop, a used bookstore, a bakery. They're quaint, but they don't generate significant revenue or attract the right demographic." There was a knock at the door, and Miranda Thornhill entered. She wore an expensive outfit and her hair was perfectly styled, but Alexander only saw the woman who had spat in Elena's face. "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I wanted to see if you'd like me to join you for lunch." Charles brightened. "Perfect timing. Miranda, this is Alexander Wells, the tech billionaire I told you about." Miranda extended her hand. "So pleased to meet you. Charles has talked about nothing else all week." Alexander shook her hand briefly, searching for any sign that she recognized him from the festival. There was none. To her, he had been just another face in the crowd, not worth remembering. "We were just discussing our downtown development project," Charles said. "Oh, it's going to be wonderful," Miranda gushed. "Finally, some decent shops in this town. The place is so dreary now, full of little businesses that really should have closed years ago." "You don't find any value in small local businesses?" Alexander asked, keeping his tone casual. Miranda laughed. "They're charming in theory, but realistically, they're just not what successful communities are built on. People like us need higher standards." "People like us," Alexander repeated. "You know," Miranda said with a conspiratorial smile, "people who understand quality and have the means to appreciate it. Not everyone can, and that's just life." Charles looked slightly uncomfortable with his wife's candor, but didn't contradict her. "I see," Alexander said calmly. "And what about the flower shop on Main Street? What was your impression of that business?" Miranda's expression shifted subtly. "That's actually the worst eyesore of all," she replied with a hint of disdain. "Though I had a rather amusing encounter with the owner recently." Alexander leaned forward slightly. "Did you? I'd love to hear about it." Miranda's perfectly painted lips curved into a smile as she settled into the chair beside her husband. "Well, this flower shop woman bumped into me at the Spring Festival and spilled my champagne all out of my dress. Can you believe it? A Valentino ruined just like that." Alexander watched her carefully. That sounds unfortunate. How did you handle it? Oh, I made sure she understood the gravity of her mistake, Miranda said with a dismissive wave of her hand. These people need to learn to be more careful around their betters. Charles cleared his throat uncomfortably. Miranda, I'm sure Mr. Wells isn't interested in festival mishaps. We were discussing the downtown development. Alexander placed his coffee cup down carefully on the glass table. The soft clink seemed to echo in the sudden quiet of the room. Actually, I am interested, he said, his voice calm but firm. Especially since I was there. Miranda's smile froze. You were at the festival? Yes, Alexander replied. I saw everything. I saw this woman accidentally bump into you. I saw her immediate genuine apology, and I saw you spit in her face. The color drained from Charles's face. Miranda, did you? I don't know what you're talking about, Miranda stammered, her composure cracking. There was a minor incident, but you're exaggerating wildly. No, I'm not, Alexander said. I was standing less than 10 feet away. After you left, I helped her clean her face. Charles turned to his wife, shock evident in his expression. You spat on someone? In public? Miranda's face flushed red. She ruined my dress. These people need to know. These people? Alexander interrupted, his voice still measured but with an edge of steel now. The woman you assaulted is named Elena Mendez. She's a single mother who built her flower shop from nothing. She donates her time and talents to the community center and creates flower arrangements for people who can't afford them for funerals and special occasions. Miranda's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Alexander reached for his briefcase and opened it. I came here today prepared to invest $50 million in your tech park project, Charles. It's a good business proposal, and it would have been profitable for both of us. Charles leaned forward eagerly, clearly hoping to salvage the deal despite his wife's behavior. And we can still move forward with it. Miranda will apologize, of course. I've decided to make a different investment instead. Alexander continued, pulling out a folder and placing it on the table. These are the papers showing that I've purchased the entire block where Elena's flower shop is located. Charles stared at the documents in disbelief. You bought it? From whom? From Urban Renaissance LLC, your subsidiary, Alexander replied. I offered them twice the market value, and your board of directors approved the sale yesterday. I don't think they realized I was the same Alexander Wells you were meeting with today. Charles grabbed the papers, scanning them with increasing desperation. This isn't possible. I would have been notified. Check with your legal department, Alexander suggested. The sale is final. Miranda found her voice again. Why would you do this? Over some silly flower shop woman? Alexander looked at her directly. Because how we treat people matters, Mrs. Thornhill. Especially how we treat those who have less power than we do. He turned back to Charles. Not only will Elena's rent not increase, but I'm establishing a business incubator for all the small shops you plan to demolish. They'll receive subsidized rent and business development support. Charles's face had turned ashen as he realized the magnitude of what had happened. The development project was worth millions. And treating people with basic human dignity is worth far more, Alexander replied. He pulled another document from his briefcase. Additionally, I've set up a community development fund specifically for small business owners in the downtown area. It will be named the Elena Mendez Fund, and she'll help administer it. He stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. Oh, and one more thing. I've purchased the vacant lot next to the community center. Instead of turning it into luxury condos as you planned, it will become an expanded community garden where Elena will teach flower arranging and gardening skills to local youth and seniors. Charles stared up at him, speechless. The tech park deal could have been beneficial for both of us, Alexander said. But sometimes there are more important things than money. Thank you for the coffee. As he turned to leave, Miranda called after him. This is absurd. All this because I put some shop girl in her place. Alexander paused at the door. No, Mrs. Thornhill. All this because you showed me exactly who you are. And in doing so, you helped me remember who I want to be. 6 months passed like a gentle breeze. The downtown area that the Thornhills had once called an eyesore now bustled with renewed energy. Colorful awnings hung over shop windows, flower boxes brightened the sidewalks, and people gathered at outdoor tables, enjoying fresh pastries from the bakery and coffee from the local cafe. Elena's flower shop had expanded into the empty space next door. A new sign hung above the door, still reading Bloom and Grow, but now with "and Teaching Garden" added beneath it. Inside, the front remained filled with fresh flowers and arrangements, but the back had been transformed into a classroom space where Elena taught flower arranging classes twice a week. On this particular sunny afternoon, Elena stood at the counter, carefully crafting a bouquet for a young man's marriage proposal. Sophia rushed in through the back door, her face flushed with excitement. "Mom, the community garden fence is finished," she announced. Mr. Wells came by himself to help install the last section. Elena smiled. In the months since Alexander had revealed himself and his plans to her, she had come to think of him as a friend, not just a benefactor. He never acted superior despite his wealth, often rolling up his sleeves to help with projects around the downtown area. "Did you thank him?" Elena asked, wrapping a ribbon around the bouquet stems. "Of course," Sophia replied. "He said he's coming by later to talk to you about something important." The bell over the shop door jingled, and both women looked up, expecting to see Alexander. Instead, a woman in simple, elegant clothes stood hesitantly in the doorway. Her designer sunglasses couldn't quite hide her identity, Miranda Thornhill. Elena felt her heart skip a beat. She hadn't seen Miranda since that day at the festival, though she had heard plenty about the Thornhills in the months since. Their social standing had crumbled after the story of Miranda's behavior went public. Charles had been forced to sell several properties at a loss, and many of their former friends had distanced themselves. "Can I help you?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite her surprise. Sophia moved protectively closer to her mother, her young face wary. Miranda removed her sunglasses slowly. Her face looked different somehow, the haughty confidence replaced by something softer, more uncertain. "I've come to apologize," she said quietly. "What I did was unforgivable." Elena studied the woman who had once humiliated her so publicly. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by a simple blouse and pants. The flashy jewelry was absent. Even her hair was different, simpler, less perfect. "It's been a difficult time," Miranda continued when Elena didn't immediately respond. "Charles and we're separated now. After everything that happened with Mr. Wells, Charles started questioning a lot of things about our life together. About me." She swallowed hard. "About himself." Elena set down the bouquet she was working on. "I'm sorry to hear about your marriage." Miranda shook her head. "Don't be. It needed to happen." "I needed to see myself clearly." She glanced around the shop. "Your store is beautiful. I never really looked at it before." An awkward silence filled the air until Elena finally spoke. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said simply. "Would you like to learn how to arrange flowers? We're having a workshop this weekend." Miranda's eyes widened in surprise. "You would teach me?" "After what I did." "Holding on to anger only hurts yourself in the end," Elena replied. "Besides, flowers have a way of healing hearts." From across the street, Alexander watched the interaction through the shop window. He had just finished helping with the community garden fence and was on his way to tell Elena some good news. The Elena Mendez Fund had received a major donation from an anonymous benefactor, himself, though Elena didn't need to know that. He smiled slightly as he saw Elena showing Miranda around the shop. When he had confronted the Thornhills 6 months ago, he had wanted justice, not revenge. Seeing Miranda humbled and Elena gracious in victory was the most meaningful return on his investment, far more valuable than any business deal could have been. As he watched, Sophia spotted him through the window and waved enthusiastically. Elena looked up and smiled warmly, gesturing for him to come in. Alexander crossed the street, reflecting on how a single moment of cruelty had set in motion events that transformed not just a downtown area, but the lives of everyone involved. Money could buy buildings and fund programs, but it was human connection, both its breaking and its mending, that truly changed the world. As he reached for the door handle, the little bell jingled welcomingly. Some investments couldn't be measured in dollars, but in the restoration of human dignity and the power of compassion to transform lives.